Image layers open up a whole new world of possibilities whether you're designing or retouching. Let's explore the basics. Image layers are among the most used features of Photoshop. They allow you to arrange multiple elements in a single document and still be able to edit them individually. Let's go to our Chapter 12 folder and open the file titled Shapes. You can't tell just by looking at an image how many layers it has. To do that, you have to visit the Layers panel. You can see that this image has a number of layers. And one of the great things about using layers is that you can move them individually. I want you to select the Move tool in the Tools panel and make sure that up in the Options bar you have the Auto Select option checked. Very important. With that option checked, you can simply click and highlight a layer automatically. As soon as I made that click, the layer 2 circles in the Layers panel was selected. And if I click and drag, I can move that layer around. Note that both of these circles are moving, and that's because, well, in the 2 circles layer, there are 2 circles. Both of these circles are on the same layer, so they move together. We cannot move these circles individually. But look what happens if I click on this left red circle. Here, the red circle layer is highlighted, and I can indeed move this circle around anywhere I want without touching the green circle. Now, I should point out there are 2 basic distinctions between layers. At the bottom of the Layers panel, you'll see that we have a layer titled Background. This is the default. Every time you create a new document in Photoshop, it begins with a background layer. And background layers have a couple of limitations. You'll notice that there's a padlock to the right of it. With background layers, you cannot move their layer objects with the Move tool. You can't apply layer effects, and all background layers must have a background color. They cannot be transparent like these layers above it are. You can easily convert a background layer simply by double-clicking on its name. Photoshop gives you the option to name the layer. We'll just select OK. Now the padlock is gone, and now if I take the Move tool and click anywhere on this layer, I can move it around. And notice that as I'm moving, the empty areas of that layer become transparent. Let's undo that move with Control-Z on the PC, Command-Z on the Mac. We can rename layers very easily. If you scroll back up to the top, you'll see that I've got a generic Layer 6 name. That's the name Photoshop gave it. I'm going to give it something much more useful. Double-clicking on the layer name highlights the text so I can change it. There we go. Now we've got a descriptive name. When you have a lot of layers, it's very important to give them descriptive names. It'll make your life a lot easier. We can change the order of layers. I'm going to move this green circle so that it overlaps the red circle. Now the green is on top because in our Layers panel, the green circle layer resides above red circle. If I switch that, simply by clicking and dragging the layer down, now the red circle is overlapping. Another neat thing we can do with layers is align and distribute them. I'm going to select multiple layers. I'll start with red circle. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, select green circle, and then green diamond. Now I need to turn on the visibility for green diamond. There it is. And I'm going to scroll down and turn off the elements that we're not using. So I've got 3 layers selected, and with the Move tool selection in the Options bar, I have some choices for how to align these. This very first icon will align the 3 layers along their top edge. So I click that, and now all 3 are aligned at the top edge. I can choose to distribute them. If I move over here to this second grouping of tools, I can click on the Horizontal Distribute tool to allow them to have an equal amount of space between each object. The objects are now distributed evenly with the same amount of overlap between the 3 of them. The last thing I want to show you here is how to link layers. I'm going to click on red circle to deselect the other 2 for a moment. And if I hold down the Shift key again and select green circle, I'm going to move down to the bottom of the Layers panel and click the link icon. Now both layers have a link, and what that means is that whether I select green circle or red circle, whatever I do to that layer will happen to the second linked layer. So if I simply click on green circle and drag it around, you can see the red circle follows. It's as if they're on the same layer, but the link is only a temporary feature. We can turn that off anytime. If we wanted to transform both of these layers, because they are linked, we could simply go to the Edit menu, select Free Transform, and notice the bounding box extends across both objects, and I can simply shrink them down, skew them a little bit. The change applies to both layers. I'm going to hit the Enter key to commit. The Link tool allows you to work on one layer and have the change applied to the second layer automatically. Now, if you're finished with linking them and you'd like to work individually with them again, simply go back down to the bottom of the Layers panel, click the link icon, and now we can edit those layers independently once again. Let's take a closer look at the Layers panel and explore the options it gives us. In our Chapter 12 folder, we're going to begin with the file Layers01. Now, much of what we do to layers is going to occur in the Layers panel. We can add a new layer simply by clicking on this Add Layer icon, and there we have Layer 1, a brand new layer. We can duplicate an existing layer simply by clicking on it and dragging it down to the same icon, and now we have a copy of that layer. If we want to get rid of a layer, we can delete it simply by clicking the layer to highlight it and pressing this trash can icon. Photoshop says, do you really want to do this? We'll select yes. You could also delete a layer by clicking it and dragging it to the trash icon, and that will eliminate that Photoshop warning. You can adjust the opacity of layers. With this daisy layer selected, I'm going to click on the word opacity, and instead of 100%, let's type in 50%. Now you can see the bottom image is being allowed to show through at a 50% strength. We'll reset this back to 100. Blending modes here at the top of the Layers panel offer you a number of options for adding creative effects to your images. Let's just take a look at two. If I set this to screen, it blends those two together nicely, similarly to reducing the opacity, but with a bit more subtlety. Let's take a look at a brand new addition to CS5, Divide. That's a cool abstract effect. I'm going to set this back to normal. And I'm going to turn on the hue, saturation, and levels adjustment layers. Right now, the adjustment layers are applying not only to the daisy layer, but to the sky layer. If I turn off daisy temporarily, and you can see that levels is applying to this bottommost layer. But suppose I want these two adjustment layers to only apply to the daisy layer and not spill through. Well, we can do that by creating what's called a clipping mask. I'm going to select both of these adjustment layers, shift-click to select the second layer, and in the flyout menu at the top of the Layers panel, I'm going to select Create Clipping Mask. Now look what happens. If I turn this on and off, you can see daisy changing, but that sky along the top of the image is remaining the same. These effects have been clipped so that they end at the layer immediately below them. Adding layers to your images greatly increases their file size. But if we flatten an image, we compress all of this information into a single background layer. And we can flatten simply by going back to the flyout menu and select Flatten Image. All those changes take effect, and they're now a background layer. I'm going to undo that, Control-Z on the Mac, Command-Z on the PC. If we want to merge the layers instead and not create a background layer, we can simply go back to the same menu, and this time select Merge Visible. We've now compressed all of those layers into a single layer, but that layer has not been converted into a background layer. I want to show you another image. Let's close this one, and we don't need to save it. Back in our Chapter 12 folder, let's open Layers02. Notice that even though this image has a single layer, it is not a background layer. There's no padlock icon there, and that's important because we're going to add layer styles, and you cannot do that on a background layer. Let's go up to the Window menu, select Styles, and we have our Styles options here. On the flyout menu, I'm going to click, and we're going to load some new styles. Let's start with photographic effects for this image. Photoshop asks if we want to replace the contents. That's absolutely okay with us. Now you see all these icons here. These really offer you no help in terms of what the effects are going to do. So let's go back to our flyout menu and select text only. This is much better. Let's see what happens if we select negative. Well, it converts the image to a negative. Sepia tone does exactly what you might expect. Notice that as we click a layer style, in the Layers panel, we can see effects show up immediately beneath the layer. Because those effects are in the Layers panel, we can turn them on and off at will, but we can also go down, double-click on any of the effects, and we can edit the settings. So these styles are a great starting point, but you could also tweak them to taste. Let's take a look at one more set of styles. We'll go to Image Effects. Again, it's okay for us to replace these. Let's check black and white photo. We've got a blue filter, circular vignette, all these kinds of things. So you've got tons of styles you can cycle through, and styles are nothing more than a collection of layer effects. So you can turn them on and off, and you can edit them to your heart's content. The last thing I want to show you here is very cool. We're going to learn how to create knockout type. Let's close this image. We don't need to save it. And back in our Chapter 12 folder, we are going to open the file titled Knockout. Now in this image, I've got a background layer. I have created a layer effects layer right above it called Brick Wall. We'll turn that on. Now what we're going to do is to create some type and let it knock out this brick wall so that the background image shows through. Let's select the Type tool. That's in your Tools panel. The shortcut is T. I'm selecting the font Arial and black because I want something very bold. You can choose a different font, but you'll get the best results with a typeface that is very, very wide and fat. So I'm going to simply click and type in the word here, clouds. I'm going to type it in all caps. Now that's pretty small for the effect that I want to do, so I'm simply going to click in here with the Control key. That would be the Command key on the Mac. And you can see the text bounding box, and I'm going to drag this up to expand the text. And I think I want to drag it out on the side as well. There we go. We're going to have something that stretches just about from edge to edge. That looks pretty good. I'll hit the Enter key to commit to that. Now what we want to do is go to our Layers panel, and up in the flyout menu, we are going to select Blending Options. Now the very first step here, very important, this will not work if you don't do it. Set Fill Opacity down to 0%. Our text is going to temporarily disappear, but under Knockout, we want to choose Deep. This will take it all the way down to the background layer. Hit OK, and now you can see that our text, instead of being black, has cut out so that the bottom image can be revealed. And this is still a text layer. We have not rasterized it. We can still move this around. If I simply click with the Control key on the PC, that would be the Command key on the Mac, I can move it down here. We can move this freely and decide where this looks absolutely best. So there you have it, knockout type that reveals our background layer. Once you've added more than a couple of layers, it's time to start organizing them. Let's go back to our Chapter 12 folder and open up our old friend Shapes. You can see that the Layers panel is starting to get a bit unwieldy, and if I turn all of these on, the image itself gets a little bit busy. I'm going to show you how to create groups in your Layers panel to manage all these layers. In the flyout menu of the Layers panel, I'm simply going to click and choose New Group. Photoshop asks us for a name. I'm going to group all of my circles together. So I'm going to name this Circles. Hit OK. Now we have a folder. What can we do with that? Well, we can add layers inside that. I'm going to drag this layer 6 thumbnail because it's a circle. Click and drag it up till it's over that layer and release it. Now you can see that layer 6 is inside the Circles folder. If I close Circles, you cannot see layer 6. I'm going to do the same with red. Simply clicking and dragging it, and we have one more Circles layer down here that we can drag back up. Now we've cleaned up the Layers panel a bit. We have our circles here. We can open them and close them in one click. I'm going to do the same thing with diamonds, but this time I'll do it a bit differently. I'm going to click on Green Diamond and Shift click to select the next two layers. Now, in our flyout menu, I'm going to select New Group from Layers. When we select this option, Photoshop bundles the layers that we have just manually selected and puts them in the group for us. It saves me a lot of clicking and dragging. We'll name this. Now, those 3 layers have automatically been placed in the Diamonds folder. If I open up Diamonds, they're all in there. Make sure at this point that you have the visibility icons turned on for all 3, because I want to show you something very cool. If we close the layer group and simply turn the icon off, it affects all the layers included in that group. So an easy way to turn layers on and off. So with layer groups, we've got a quick and easy way to manage the contents of our layers panel. Now I want to show you something very cool, layer comps. Layer comps are a great way to create snapshots of changes that we make to our layers. Let's see how that works. In the window menu, I want you to go and select layer comps. Now with layer comps, we can record 3 things about layers. We can record the visibility, whether they're on or off, the position of elements in a layer, and whether we have layer styles applied to them. So let's go to the layer comps panel, click on the flyout, and choose new layer comp. Now we haven't made any changes yet, so we're simply going to label this Start. And we want to have all 3 boxes checked. We want to apply changes to visibility, position, and appearance. So let's hit OK. Now let's make some changes. I'm going to open up this Diamonds group, and the green diamond, I want to apply a layer style. So I'm going to go back to my layer styles panel here, and let's choose a different library of styles. We are going to choose buttons. And we can hit OK to replace the contents and simply check angled spectrum. There we go, huge obvious change. And notice down here we can see the effects in our layers panel. I'm going to scroll down and select red diamond, and this time we're going to choose beveled mouse over. So we've got 2 changes there. I'm going to close the Diamonds group, and I'm going to turn off the background layer, and now in circles I'm going to select layer 6 and red circle and move them both. Now if all of the circle layers are moving, I want you to look in the options bar and make sure that you have layer selected next to auto select. There we go. We've made enough changes that the difference should be obvious. So now back in our layer comps panel, we're going to click and select again new layer comp, and this one we're just going to give the title spectrum for that first effect we did. We'll hit OK. Now what we can do is go back to the beginning to start, and our document goes back to that state. If we click on spectrum, we move back to this current state, and you can easily imagine that you could have any number of these layer comps. Layer comps are a great way to quickly and easily go back between various stages of an image. And best of all, layer comps remain with your image. If you save the file, close it, and then reopen it later, your layer comps will still be there, and you can move to any of the states that you have saved.